My name is Jennifer Stirling-Campbell, and I'm now offering a free 20-minute one-on-one session exclusively for my newsletter subscribers. Sign up at overcomedepressionpodcast.com and quick start your healing journey today.
There is no gatekeeper to higher knowledge or wisdom or divinity. It's you. You are your gatekeeper. And so to your point, a lot of other practices, I think, go astray because they teach you to relinquish your main consciousness. So you're supposed to meditate until you know nothing or you go unconscious. Okay, great. Then who's meditating? Not you, because you're unconscious. You don't even remember what happened.
Which I don't see as a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
I always felt like there's something about this that just isn't quite right. And I didn't know what it was.
And that's the vast majority of the New Age stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the vast majority of New Age stuff, the intent, I feel, is there, but they're missing just some key points where I'm kind of like...
Good people. Trying to do good things. And I think, too, for people who struggle with depression, because that's what this podcast is geared towards, when you try to meditate and clear your head, that's when it gets you. It's illegal in China and the best tool I've ever found for healing any mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual ailment, hands down. If you suffer from chronic pain, or you can think of someone you just can't stand in your life who causes stress to you, or maybe you react emotionally to certain triggers, Falun Dafa can quite literally be the cure-all. Even years after overcoming depression myself, I still struggled with certain relationships, pains in my body, and I was much more reactive than I am now until I learned Falun Dafa. And it just started to change me in ways that were miraculous, to say the least. And we can talk more about my story later, but first I want to introduce Nick and Holly. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So where does your story start? I'm assuming you weren't always familiar with Falun Dafa?
I first discovered Falun Dafa in college. So this was right around 2000 or so. Before social media, cell phones kind of just came out. I think I might have had a flip phone back then. So discovered it on an internet forum, starting to get into meditation, and then kind of just stumbled across a forum that was talking about Falun Dafa. So I basically did some research, found that the practice was actually banned in 1999. About a year prior to me finding out about it, it was actually banned in China. So it grew in China very quickly in 1992 to about 1998, 100 million people practicing in China.
Wow.
So you would have tens of thousands of people in the parks meditating. Gradually, the Chinese government started to crack down on it, and then they actually banned it, made it illegal in 1999. So
why would they make it illegal? Because I know they were kind of embracing it at first. The government was thrilled with Falun Dafa. It was all the rave. And then all of a sudden, they just stopped it. No, you can't do that anymore. It's against the law.
Sure. Holly, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, in the beginning, you're right. They said, wow, this is like an exercise heaven. Look at all these people just doing this beautiful meditation. The cost of healthcare was going down, and they thought, this is great. But what happened was they saw, wow, 100 million people started practicing this so quickly, and the Communist Party thought, well, we've got to make sure that we can control this. So we need to start taking rosters and charging money and doing all of this. And the founder said, no, it's free to learn. Come and go as you please. We can't do it like that. So that's basically what it was, is the lack of control and the lack of control of their thought. And so what they did is they took a few practitioners and beat them up and said, you can't do this anymore. The next day, a whole bunch of practitioners showed up, peaceful meditation, like, you shouldn't persecute people for your faith, right? And they said,
and this isn't a religion either.
Home.
It's not a religion. It's just a practice.
That's right. It just focused on truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, and assimilating your heart nature, your xing to those things. It's all a self-cultivation practice. It's self-guided, come and go as you please. And so the next day, they banned it, made it illegal, and created the Gestapo-type organization, which is a 610 office, to defame, demoralize, and destroy any Falun Dafa practitioner. And so from there, they started putting out propaganda that wasn't true, right? And so that's a process now where the practitioners as a whole are really trying to get the word out about what is really true and what's not. So
we had the Arizona governor actually pass a bill which made organ harvesting illegal. So meaning if you go to China, typically someone's dying for that organ. And so that's been documented now. We've actually had that passed in Arizona. It just actually passed in the House, maybe even the Senate. I think next it'll go to the president's desk. Organ harvesting is happening. If you go to China for an organ, it's 95% chance that person is probably a Falun Gong prisoner. The Muslim group has been documented. They're also being persecuted in China. There's house Christians being persecuted in China. But 95% of the organs are coming from prisoners of conscience, and most of them are Falun Gong. And so the government finally, after about 15 years of really trying to get this out there, is finally responding. They're actually making bills and things with teeth where if you're part of this organ trade and you're Chinese, you can be deported from the United States. Things like that are starting to actually happen now. So really fascinating. Most people haven't heard, they know things are happening in China, but they didn't realize the communist government turned against 100 million of its own people, started incarcerating people, and then started a black market multi-billion-dollar industry with illegal organs.
Yeah.
So it's shocking to most people even today.
Do you know anyone personally who's witnessed or experienced this?
Sure.
Because I think people listening will go, oh, come on, really? Isn't that just
really?
hearsay?
I know several people personally. I know people that have asylum in Arizona. I know people that have asylum in multiple different states, a couple different people. And there's lots of stories where they were arrested in the late 90s. In the early 2000s, they were testing their blood. So when they were there, they didn't really understand. Like, why are you beating me up, torturing me, but at the same time testing my blood? And so come to find out, they're trying to find a match for organs. So some of these people escaped. There's bizarre stories where people were able to escape prison. They made it out through Taiwan. They came to the United States. They got asylum. I know dozens and dozens of stories personally. I know 4 or 5 people just in Arizona that were imprisoned and tortured in China.
Wow. For practicing Falun Gong.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, why was I attracted to this meditation? And one of the biggest reasons was because I was reading the Epoch Times shortly after I'd felt like my life had been kind of stagnant for a while. I wanted to make some more movement in my life, improve more. It just felt like for years I'd just kind of been in the same place. And so I prayed and I asked the Lord, what should I do? I was pregnant at the time and I felt a very strong urge that it's time to start meditating. And my first response was, oh no, not meditation. That's so boring and no, not that. And one of the, I guess, things that I didn't like about meditation is so many of them are guided. Like you have a guide who's speaking and they're taking you through this meditation. And from my experience, I felt it was very distracting. And if I was just sitting there in silence, my brain wouldn't shut up. It was just constantly going, so I felt like this is a waste of time. But when I was being taken through a lot of guided meditations, I didn't feel like I was connecting to God. I felt like I was connecting to the person leading the meditation. And I didn't like that. And so I asked the Lord, what meditation should I learn? Because I know that there's many, many kinds out there. As I was consistently reading Epoch Times at the time, and there were all these articles about Falun Dafa, Falun Gong, and the thing that attracted me to it was, wow, this is illegal. And oh my gosh, they're killing people for it and they still won't stop? What is it about this meditation that's so special that people are willing to die for it? And it's not even a religion. It's not even an organized religion. Like, what is this? And I wanted to learn more. And then I realized after I started looking into it that, wow, there's movement involved. That's cool. So you're not just sitting there. There's no mediator. You learn it yourself. The end result is that you're attempting to connect to Source, to God. And I loved that. And I loved that it was non-denominational. It comes from, I suppose, Buddhist roots, but anybody of any faith is encouraged to do it. And I've found very miraculous results in myself, what it's done for my relationships, my temperament, and for my body. When I was pregnant, I started doing it, and I did it pretty religiously, about every day. I think I did the first 4, and that was about 20-25 minutes that I would do it outside, and I would wear minimal clothing to get vitamin D and no shoes so I could get grounded. And I would do it where nobody could see me. After I started doing this for a while, the first thing I noticed was that the knot in my back was no longer giving me headaches. And if I skipped a day, it would come back. So that was a big motivator. But then as time went on, I also found that I was less irritable in general. I had more energy. I was less reactive, something that would normally be a trigger to me. It wasn't hard to respond rather than be triggered emotionally. And I was like, that's cool. But the most miraculous thing, one, my baby had this really tight knot in his cord. I think the timing of when I was asked to do this by God was very important because he knew that my baby had a problem and I didn't. I did very minimal intervention. We got like one ultrasound. There was no indication there was a big knot in the cord. But when he was born, you could see that, wow, that's tight. And there were no complications. It didn't get tighter while he was coming out of the birth canal, and it was fine. But I thought, wow, if I'd been more uptight and stressed, what that could have done to my baby. I mean, he might not have survived the pregnancy. At the same time, when I was pregnant, I had had about 38 years of struggle with my mom. From the time I was very young throughout adulthood, we just struggled. We had very similar yet very different personalities in all the ways that would make two people not like each other. And it was just very hard. And I wanted to like my mom, and I know she wanted to like me, but we didn't. We did not like each other. We tolerated each other at best. And I'd all but given up. Like, I know my mom was still trying, but I was like, accepted the fact that we're going to not like each other for the rest of our lives. As I started doing this practice, it took maybe a month or two, I started noticing, gosh, my mom's kind of funny. My mom is being kind of extra nice to me lately. I wonder what she's been working on. Why is she treating me so nice? And wow, I kind of enjoy my mom. Maybe I should go out to lunch with her more often. Then as I was thinking about this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's not my mom that changed. It's me. My energy changed, and then she was responding differently to me because I was different. And we've had a friendship and a love for each other ever since. And I can't, it makes me want to cry just because I thought this was an impossible relationship, that it would never be good. And we genuinely love spending time together now. That is a miracle to me. So that is what Falun Dafa has done for me. I still try to do it every day. I do kind of a minimalist approach to it because I've got a lot going on, but I always do at least the first exercise, usually the first and second, and often the third, and sometimes the fourth. I don't do the fifth very much. That was the hardest one and the most uncomfortable. And I think that would be the next step in my journey, is to start doing those and taking that more seriously, because that's where you start really releasing all that karma, right? Through that fifth exercise.
That's the beauty of it, is kind of the seated meditation is where most of the physical transformation occurs. So my journey started 25 years ago. I had 10 years where I was extremely diligent. I meditated every day for an hour. I did the exercises every single day. Once they came out, I started doing something called Sending Forth Righteous Thoughts, which is 15 minutes, 4 times a day, specific to ending the persecution in China, clearing away interference in your life, really kind of working on other dimensions and just kind of keeping the field clean. And what I could find is anytime I had an issue, a stress, or an anxiety, if I sat down and sent forth righteous thoughts, which is kind of like a meditation, it is active. It's like you're not thinking about things or visualizing. You just have one intent to sort of rectify things that are evil in your life, or and anyway, so if I had anxiety or depression or fell into something, and I did that even for 20 minutes, it just lifted. I'm left with this very clear field and feeling of peace. And then for me, the meditation got to a point where I was able to enter into a fairly deep state of what's called ding, or no mind intent. And it would be me and my body, and then eventually me and just my thought, and then just me. And it felt like I was 2,000 miles above my body. And it was just this very, very peaceful state. And then I would bring that back with me and interact day to day. So to your point, as we're running businesses and have a child that's special needs, and I'm doing it less and less, I find myself doing the exercises 3 times a week. I'll get a meditation in once or twice a week. And it used to be that if I didn't meditate in a day, it'd be so severely different with how I interacted with the world and how I felt inside myself, that was the very first thing I did. I didn't allow myself to interact with society, other humans, or work prior to me meditating. So now I'm in this state where I'm carrying anxiety every day because I'm not fully embracing the exercises or doing them. And I know for a fact, if I did, all of that could be resolved in 48 hours.
Right.
But when I'm busy, you're sort of consciously, I'm like, well, I'm not super depressed, so we'll just carry this 20-25% burden of anxiety every day because I'm too lazy to sit in meditation.
Yeah.
That's a real thing, and it's a weird trade-off.
And we are living in a physical existence that sometimes demands those kinds of things to experience life in all of the good, the bad, and the ugly that it is. But having that tool that you know can bring you back to a state of balance is invaluable.
Absolutely.
When I met you guys, I met you at the park, you're practitioners and you're on the website. And that was the other thing that I was blown away with was this must be good if there's people willing to practice it and teach it for free. Like, that's that important to them. Wow. And the reason for it, as I understand, is to keep the corruption out of it, that money tends to corrupt
Correct.
things over time. And so it remained a very pure practice, I believe, for that reason. But it was a good 2-hour meditation. I was like, wow, this is a long time. It was very enlightening. The last part was pretty exhausting. It was difficult. I remember asking, you do this 2 hours every day? And it was Holly who said, yeah, we do. And I'm like, how? How do you find the time? And your answer was that when we put it first, it seems like everything just falls into place. Those 2 hours make the day so much easier, smoother, that we get twice as much done, even with 2 less hours of work. I believe in that principle. I've seen it in other areas of my life in other ways of just putting things first. Kind of like the golf balls and the sand demonstration, where if you put the sand in first and you try to fit in all the golf balls into a jar, won't fit. But if you do the opposite, you put all of the golf balls in first, which represent the important things, and then the sand will miraculously, it all fits into the bottle. So I was very impressed with your diligence and dedication to the practice and for what it does for you in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good reminder for us where, again, we're carrying more than we need to be consciously. And I just had this conversation with another practitioner that's been doing this for 25 years. We're scaling a company, we're making new websites, we're doing all this stuff. And I said, I'm going to be really clear that I really appreciate the team that's around me because I feel like I'm just putting out a lot of fires in the last couple of weeks. I'm not really meditating as much as I should. I said that this morning. The anxiety is creeping in. And when anxiety creeps in, it starts flooding into other areas that can have an attachment, whatever it is. Anger, jealousy, there's a bajillion attachments, you know. So when my anxiety is up, it actually starts to influence and trigger other attachments. And so when my anxiety is down and I'm meditating and doing the things, the other attachments don't even exist. It's just a strange thing where if I solve the one thing first, to your point, everything else is just smooth and resolves itself. There's a ridiculous point when I first started dating Holly, and she can kind of give her background on how she got into this as well. But we got married. She wasn't a practitioner. I read Juan rotating the law wheel every day. If I didn't meditate for a day, I'd be walking around, tripping over sidewalks, tree branches would hit me in the face, birds would poop on me. Literally, the environment
That's what it feels
would
like.
be violently against
Like, why
me.
didn't I do it in the morning?
And she would
Science
just look at
is
me.
showing that meditation first thing in the morning is the best time to do it.
Yeah, sure. And she would look at me and just say, okay, just go home and meditate for half an hour. Like, this is stupid. I'm tired of hanging out with you when trees are fighting you. This makes no sense. Just go do it.
Yeah, and he would literally be a different person as soon as he did it. And I'd be like, okay.
Well, no,
that's
I'll
what we
use
needed.
that. I mean, it's terrible, but sometimes I'll tell my husband, I didn't do my meditation yesterday. I'm sorry. It's catching up to me. I'll do better. I'll do it. But it does affect me a lot. And it's not an excuse for poor behavior to say, well, I didn't do my meditation, just put up with me. But it's a very real difference in the way that it makes me feel when I don't do it. People listening, if you're ready for the full-on 2-hour routine, by all means, if you just do the first exercise, it takes like 7 minutes, 10 minutes. World of difference. That one exercise daily keeps me in a state of bliss, for lack of a better word. Just this peace and this ability to tackle life's problems. The pain is gone in the back that I talked about.
Yep. And it manifests differently with everyone. You know, I'm not one to see a ton, but I feel a lot. So I feel energies and I feel my energy. And I know if I do the exercises and meditate, regardless of what happens later on, I'll always get this huge jolt of kind of divine or cosmic energy coming into my body. And of course, that's going to make the day go better.
Oh, I definitely feel it, especially in the second exercise. I feel energy just going crazy. I'm very sensitive to that. I love the second exercise. And I love what the book talks about, where he says when you're doing the meditations to make sure that you're still you, that other things aren't creeping in and overriding yourself.
So we own the True Rest Float Spas. So we have 50 locations in 22 states. Divinity is everywhere. It's just how are you connecting with that Tao, the Fa, or the Way, right? Every religion calls it something different, but that cosmic characteristic is, it created those things. It created us. It created everything.
Back to what you were saying about the fifth meditation, or the meditation practice, number 5, the fifth exercise. When I first started doing that exercise, you do sit in the full lotus. And at first I couldn't get into that position, right? I would do it for like a couple minutes and I would just be crying from the pain, right? But I just had to get through that. I had to burn that karma off myself. I had to do it, me. No one could do that for me. And then once I got through it, I was able to sit for the full hour and I could feel the power from that. So I think, like Nick is saying, these different modalities may be helpful stepping stones for people at a certain level or a certain point in time. But when it comes down to it, it's the actual practitioner. You're the one that has to make the choice to make the progress. And I think that's another thing that's really powerful with Falun Dafa.
Right, it's authentic. It's you and God. It's not you and a substance and a helper and God. Even though it's not quick and easy, that slow and steady growth, like for me, it didn't take very long. But if you're willing to put in the time, it's you and you're letting God teach you. I just don't think there's anything better. And it sticks. I feel like a lot of the people I know who have done psychedelics, they keep having to go back. It just doesn't last. And then it again becomes, like Nick said, kind of like a crutch. So I don't recommend it to people who have mental disorders or come to me with questions about depression. I would much rather steer them to Falun Dafa and other modalities that can be more of a permanent and grounding influence in their life. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything except your effort and time.
It's always free. There was only 2 requirements to spread the practice when Master Lee came out with this in 92. And the first one was, to your point, you can't charge money. And the second is you can't use your own understanding or what you see in another dimension to explain the practice. And so those 2 things, essentially just to your point, keep it uncorrupted and pure, so that the Fa taught to us is just that. And he said, you don't even need to come to me with questions. He's like, you've been taught the Fa, the Tao, the Way. You need to enlighten to those things within your own life. So anytime you're asking someone else for a question, you can talk amongst yourselves, but if you're asking for like, hey, there's this direct thing in my life, what should I do? You're sort of giving up your own opportunity to someone or something else. That's meant for you to work through. Now, it doesn't mean you can't share with other people, but your understanding is always going to be just that, right? Is your understanding.
Yeah, I think that you, with Falun Dafa especially, you understand as you cultivate more that it's up to you. You are the one that can respond. No one can make you feel anything, right? You're the one that can respond to any situation, like what happened with you and your mom. And you thought that she was changing, but actually it was coming from within, right?
Right. I've heard many testimonials of different people. The way that I kind of started was I found the website, and then I signed up for the newsletters that would come every week. They were very simple, and they would just give you something to read from the Falun Gong book. Right here, looks like this. You can get it on Amazon. You guys gave me this one. Yeah. Thank you. I did read it, and it's fascinating. It's so true. I didn't come across anything that really counteracted anything I already believed in my Christian faith. It just was validating, because I'm like, yeah, but it was kind of this more rounded, like put some of those other pieces together that I couldn't quite see, or that I did see but I'd never read anywhere else. And so it's pretty cool. So I started with the emails, and then it would tell you, we'll learn the first practice and work on that for a while. So it was a few weeks before I learned all 5. I think I got through actually the first 4 before I came and met you guys, because I guess it's considered a technology, would you say? And it's something that was restored by, say his name again, because I can't.
Wei Hongzhi.
Yes, thank you. And it's like a restoration of lost truths that have been implemented in yoga, Tai Chi, all these other modalities, Reiki. But I've always, oddly, and you guys can maybe share what your feelings on this, but I've always felt like these are all good. And I'd thought about learning Reiki, but something about it, I was just like, just doesn't seem quite right. Like, close, but like there's something missing. Same with Tai Chi. They all seem to be good. There's a lot of them, these practices, but Falun Dafa was the first Eastern practice that I've ever found that felt like this is perfect. It's so undefiled. This is it, the way that it was always intended to be. Of course, you see how people are monetizing and making money on these other ones, and how that may have influenced how it was presented and the people that changed it over time and so forth, and maybe introduced energies that weren't so great. Whereas Oddly, it just feels so good. There's nothing about it that feels off or evil or like I should be careful or anything like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it is a land of purity. So from, gosh, I don't know, 2000 to about 2019, there were these things called Fa conferences, and these would be hosted worldwide. Usually there'd be 1 to 3, 4 a year. The last one was in New York, 2019. There'd probably be about 5,000 of us that show up worldwide, all Falun Gong practitioners. Li Hongzhi would just speak for a couple hours. We would give our own sharings of our cultivation. Hey, what are we learning? How are we doing this as a group? What's going on in China? But what's really fascinating about it is when you're in that field where there's 5,000 people doing this, some of my most intense physiological experiences in my life have been at those conferences, sober, right? On psychedelics. Some of my most intense experiences were at those conferences where some of the biggest cultivation and enlightenment insights were in those fields. And it's just tremendous. And to your point, it's something that was given to us, I think, in this time period. And there's other supplemental lectures. He'll talk usually at least once a year and have an article about this specific time period. And it's really fascinating. I don't know if you've read some of the newer
I have. There was
articles.
one, I don't remember what it was called. Fascinating. I mean, it was basically talking about end times. And I mean, I'm fairly familiar with Isaiah. It's pretty cryptic, but I'm trying to understand him better. It goes hand in hand. And the thing that stuck out to me, I started laughing out loud. I'm like, no way. Because he started talking about the 3 realms after life. And I'm like, that's what my church talks about all the time. The 3 degrees of glory. You know, it's the same thing. So it's pretty cool. I've loved everything I've read from him. And that's
my favorite thing, is that these things are real, right? So we had a series of paintings done by practitioners that were incarcerated. And they would have a vision of an image they were supposed to paint in China. They would then miraculously get out of prison somehow. There's ridiculous stories where I had one friend, Zilong, who was incarcerated in prison. He had a dream that he was supposed to walk home. So he was in prison, he was arrested with his friend. His friend was killed. And this was probably 4 or 5 months into the process. So his friend was killed, tortured to death. They never touched him. Not once. And his friend would come to him and say, why am I being tortured? And they won't touch you. And his response would be something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, I have no fear in my heart for death or pain. And I have nothing but compassion for the beings that have been deceived and are doing evil. And he kept that in his heart.
That's beautiful.
Not at all wavering. He was ready to go if he had to go. And so he was there for his friend, is my understanding. No one could touch him. And when his friend died, literally it was like the next day or 48 hours later, he had a vision or a dream that he could walk home. He woke up, the cell was unlocked. He walked out of the prison, everyone was asleep. And then he walked home. And then he said another point he was getting harassed again, or police were after him. And it was at night, and he was running around, and he went into a building, there was nowhere to go. And he just stood there and had pure faith in God. The policeman came up to him, walked up to him, put a light in his face, and then walked by him. He was invisible.
Wow.
They couldn't see him.
Yeah.
He has other miraculous stories, and they go on and on and on, but he escaped China and came to the US. But then at these conferences, we all talk about these things. It's just so fascinating, the amount of depth that true cultivation has. So to your point, all these other practices, they're focusing on healing and fitness. And I think what's unique to Falun Gong is healing and fitness. He talks about it as just an interim step, and all illness is an abnormal state. And so we don't focus on that at all. You just do the practice. You don't need to heal other people. If you do the exercises and you have a pure mind, things will just sort of resolve themselves. And so, of course, we're all human beings. So we run into issues, but just understanding that faith and just doing the exercises, and a lot of times that's enough.
Yeah, and not doing it with a result in mind, I think has been important for me. A constant reminder, because sometimes I'll be like, wow, my back hurts. I'm going to do Falun Dafa. And I'm like, no, that's not the purpose of it. To try to forget about that and just do it. And just feel it. And not think about what I'm trying to accomplish through it. There's no agenda here. You just accept whatever comes to you, rather than trying to make something happen. I think that's significant.
Yeah. And we used to have this exhibit called the Jin Shanren, or Truthfulness, Compassion, Forbearance Art exhibit. Kind of sidetracked with his story, but There's other stories like that, and they all had these visions that they were supposed to paint. So let's call it 10, 15 people got out, they painted these pictures, and then they're part of an exhibit. And so we had this exhibit in Tempe at one point, and I'd have a Mormon friend come in, and they'd look at some of these paintings, and they'd be like, how do you know that? Or how did they know this? That's only the highest level Mormons know these things.
Right, I'm Mormon.
And I was like, well, of course, because they're true.
Yeah.
You know, other people can go to these realms and see these things and have these experiences because it's real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just limited to people of a religious faith. Like, truth over here only. Like, anybody of any religious faith anywhere in the world can access this. Truth is truth is truth. It just is. I love that. I'd love to see some of these paintings. If you want to share them with me, I could maybe put them on my website so people can look at them. I don't know.
Oh, sure. I mean, they're all online. So, of course, you can look at them online. You can get giclée prints of them. I have a couple hanging in my house.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites is just this huge painting of basically beings of all races on these clouds. And then they have a piece of paper in their hands. And so it represents coming down to the human world with your vow.
Yeah, I believe that. How many people do you think are able to recall and fulfill their vows? Because I think a lot of people, we all try.
That's a question and a half.
We all try, but I think a lot of people
I don't have any clue.
don't quite get it, you know?
We're all trying our best. I mean, I would say that's been my biggest struggle in the last 25 years is trying to, and I think that's part, I've already answered my own question, right? Trying to stay on my vow or trying to stay on my path. And what I found is the path is usually pretty well laid out. It's just us not self-sabotaging the path.
Yes.
So usually the path is pretty clear, and then I'll sabotage it.
Yeah.
And then I'll have to go through some grueling lesson that takes 5 years, get back on the path, and then go, oh, well, that was always the path, and oopsie daisy, shouldn't have done that. And so for me, it's really about, I think, stepping into my own role as a leader. And I was very reluctant to lead things for a very long time. I just wanted to kind of be lazy and not lead anything. And now I'm trying to fit into the roles I think I'm meant to have as part of my path. You just have to embrace them. That's just your path. I love the way Dave Chappelle says this. He was on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld. And he was talking about sometimes the idea shows up in a car and it's basically like, hey, get in. And the idea is driving the car. I think about that too, where it's like, okay, the things that are already arranged or divinely sorted are there. It's just us knowing the path. Things like anxiety and pain take us away from our path. And so it's just a matter of how do we return to the state of remembrance.
Yeah, and remembering can be hard when there's so many distractions. So many distractions. So taking the time to do Falun Dafa is one way that we can kind of just push all those distractions out and take that time to recalibrate and refocus. I was reading something by someone who has nothing to do with Falun Dafa, but it totally ties in. He talks about 0 point, and it's the longest measurable wavelength there is. Really slow wavelength. If you looked at it in a sciencey way, is what Falun Dafa is doing. There's this hierarchy of structure where most people focus on the physical. They go to the doctor, or they eat food. They do all the things that their physical body is craving or are asking for. And that's all well and good, and that can help us maintain a balanced state of health. The next step, which is a little higher in the triangle, a little smaller, is biochemical. So either herbs, pharmaceutical drugs, things like that to alter the state of the body. After that is magnetic and electromagnetic. So using those kind of frequencies to alter the body state. It could be infrared sauna, I'm guessing, or just magnetic therapy. PEMFs is another one. The beamer, the people rave about the beamer. And then there's gravity, which is color and sound. So changing things with music. Music is powerful, and the colors that we focus on and see. And right at the very top, it takes the least amount of effort and time to make the biggest change. As you go up in this triangle, physical takes a tremendous amount of effort to make changes, focusing on physical. Drugs and herbs, a little less, but still quite a bit. And then going up, they call it boson, which I think would be where Falun Dafa resides. And that's thought, breathing, prayer, meditation, and that energy, that enlightened state that just changes everything below it. If you focused on that, first and foremost, everything else just falls into place. And that's what he was trying to say, is that you can spend all your time on the physical things, you're going to burn out, or you could spend the majority of your time, the time that you're putting in, because we can't meditate all day, but whatever effort you're putting in, it will have the biggest effect if you can achieve that enlightened state of mind on your whole system, your whole body, your mental, spiritual, emotional, physical. It just heals everything without really that much effort.
Yep.
So.
No, yeah, makes perfect sense. It's really interesting where all of the scientific theories and things like that are going to eventually prove divinity. They talk about singularity. They talk about all of these things where are we in a simulation? You know, and the answer is kind of yes. But everyone in scientists take it as, okay, a race at the lowest level of the cosmos got higher technology and then was ascending through various realms, and then the human race is sort of the ancestors of those advanced beings, right? So a lot of this is still thinking from humanity, and this part of the cosmos was the start of it all, right? It's sort of the opposite of the Big Bang, where it's like, it's just funny to me, where they're not thinking of it as higher divine beings created various realms, getting lower and lower in consciousness until finally there was the human race. Yeah, it's just funny. But that's very common. So I think it's just a matter of bridging that, where a lot of scientists initially don't want to look at divinity. But then the wiser scientists towards the end of their life, much like Einstein, kind of went, yeah, there's no way divinity doesn't exist.
Right.
And intelligent design and all of these things. It's just an odd part of being human and in the state of delusion is for those on the path, I've had experiences that are just incredible. And you can explain all of them away as like, oh, the brain did this and that happened. And
right.
Sure, but I know people that have had out-of-body experiences. Holly's had an out-of-body experience. I've had people meet each other in a different dimension. So you can't just explain all of that away as imagining. But they're not... You can't just do it again, right? So science would say, okay, great, then press this button and do that exact thing again.
Yeah.
Well, that's just not how it works.
Right. And I think to that, this was someone else who was talking about meditation, but they made that point that the first time they had this amazing experience while they were meditating, they're like, wow, I want to experience that again. So they sat down and they tried to have that same experience and they couldn't get it. And they kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And it felt like a letdown. And they finally had to accept and realize that it's going to be different every single time. And if it wasn't, you wouldn't be growing, for one thing. You go through ebbs and flows. And when you're ready for the next lesson, it will come. It's not just, boom, when I want it. It's when God decides I'm ready for it.
That's right. Well, and you're not doing it for the experience. I've had a lot of one-time experiences where it was enough. Where some doubt I had or something or other, and it was, well, I'm going to give you this experience, and that's all I needed. I've had some experiences that were very intense. I wouldn't ask for them again, but I'm glad I had them. One of the most profound, I remember this so vividly, in the book they kind of talk about opening of the heavenly circuit, which is one stage of opening energy channel. The fundamental goal of Qigong in Falun Dafa, from a physical standpoint, is to replace all the body's energy channels with one energy channel. Or conversely, you have no energy channel. So you just become light, essentially, right? And so Taoism talks about this, where you can transcend this dimensional realm. It's like a superconductive state. And that's actually the goal, is eventually we should be able to transcend this dimension. And say a Jesus's ascension in broad daylight is a process that can be repeated by all beings in this realm.
He did say, be ye as I am, follow me.
Right, it's a possible conversion. But what's fascinating is I remember the state where we were at a conference and I wasn't wearing a jacket, it was cold outside. I had neither hot nor cold feelings in my body. It just felt like my body was just pure clear or clean or pure, like there was no hot or cold. But then I remember walking into a room where one practitioner was berating another one. And the energy and intensity from that beratement went into all the cells of my being and literally was so intense it brought me down to my knees in tears. And I just remembered that so well, because it was basically, how powerful are we as beings and what are we putting out there? And I think we're all so numb to negative, you just get bombarded. So of course
we have
you
these
couldn't be in that
shields up
state.
all the time too, that we're not only blocking the bad, but maybe we're blocking the good as well.
Sure. But I was in such a pure state that I couldn't even interact with other people or even other practitioners. And that was only maybe 4 or 5 hours. And then that was sort of turned off, fortunately. You know, I'd be in the corner crying half the day.
Do you think that's the case for people who are super sensitive, that struggle with anxiety, that maybe they're just very open and that by taking the drugs, it shuts it up, which I don't know is a good thing in a lot of cases if they could learn to manage it so that they can access those gifts that they've been given that makes them so sensitive.
I think so. When people say, what's the word they use for that? Is an empath, right? And so I think there's truth to that, where when Falun Dafa talks about it in detail, where that's sort of an interim level state, where your energy fields are all opened up, and then you might be extra sensitive, but then when you keep doing the exercises, passes pretty quick. Like I said, for me, that passed in 4 or 5 hours. I'm sure there's people that are stuck there a couple weeks, maybe they're stuck there their whole life or months. They're struggling with it, but the goal is, to your point, kind of learn from that experience, and then start building your own energy in your own fields, so then now your field supersedes that of others, so on and so forth, not in a dominating way, but just in a way that you can hold your own peace.
Right, despite what's going on around you. That was something else I read in the Falun Gong book that I was really impressed with. Was a lot of meditations I'd tried before would focus on one chakra at a time or one meridian at a time, and our bodies have countless number of chakras, from what I understand. It's not just the big ones. And Falun Dafa, the technology, can unblock every chakra and meridian in your body all by itself without having to try to focus on every little one. And I've noticed that the fourth exercise literally follows the meridian pathways.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole idea, is that it's fully holistic, fully comprehensive. You don't even need to worry about or think about mind intent or energy channels. It's all built in.
It's just happening without you having to even know how it's working, because I didn't know how it was working, and I did it, and it had miraculous results for me.
And the word technology is really fascinating, because yes, he says that Qigong is actually a technology, and there's mechanisms being placed in you in other dimensions that facilitate the fundamental changing of your entire being. And he said, actually, in Christianity, this was also happening, just not taught to you. In Buddhism, this was also happening. It just wasn't taught, as it wasn't part of the practice. But he's like, there's a lot going on in other dimensions, and it's safe to call it a technology. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things have been lost, and I love that he calls it a restoration of a practice that was once lost, because that's what we believe is part of my faith in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon, that things were restored. I don't think that everything that there is to know has been restored yet. I also believe that people of olden times, the people of the Bible, the wise men, Abraham, King David, were taught by God and utilized astrology, which was once a very Christian thing. Like, people don't understand this. It's been very much perverted and corrupted. The Greeks got a hold of it and they paganized it. But it was always very much focused on Christ. All of the zodiac signs were all about Christ originally. And the people who studied astronomy also studied astrology. It was considered a science, both together. Didn't learn one without the other. And they saw it as God giving them signs and wonders in the heavens, and that could teach you, and you'd ask God questions. What does this mean? They studied the patterns. I consider myself a Christ-centered astrologer, and people often will raise their eyebrows like, what? That stuff is witchcraft. It can be used for witchcraft, and it has been. But if you utilize it in a way that God intended, it becomes one of those restored truths that has been lost.
All of it has cosmic grounds, right? It's interesting. It's talked about a little differently. Eastern astrology is different than Western astrology, as they're different systems. And so our understanding is, to your point, there's these 3 realms. And he talks about how there's these heavenly realms, but then outside of the 3 realms, but anyway, it's just all of these truths are kind of intermingled across all different religions. And this is why we have been a part of the Arizona Interfaith Movement for the last 20 years. Because as we started talking to Mormons and Baha'i, Buddhists, the fundamental essence of cultivation is the same in all of them. So they're all cultivating the Tao, the Fa, or the Way. They're talking about it with different terms, different meanings, but at the end of the day, those that are doing the cultivation are truly cultivating. The Christians that understand that are disciples of Jesus, and they're practicing that cultivation way. And then I think you're right, a lot of truths have probably been lost for various reasons we don't need to get into, but even meditation is demonized. Sitting alone with your thoughts and waiting for God or an answer is somehow demonized.
Can't trust it, you'll get deceived. Just do what I tell you to do.
Right. And so I think that's the key, is that there is no gatekeeper to higher knowledge or wisdom or divinity. It's you. You are your gatekeeper. And so to your point, a lot of other practices I think go astray because they teach you to relinquish your main consciousness. So you're supposed to meditate until you know nothing or you go unconscious. Okay, great. Then who's meditating? Not you, because you're unconscious. You don't even remember what happened.
Which I don't see as a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
I always felt like there's something about this that just isn't quite right. And I didn't know what it was.
And that's the vast majority of the New Age stuff.
Yeah.
The vast majority of New Age stuff, the intent, I feel, is there, but they're missing just some key points where I'm kind of like...
Good people trying to do good things. And I think, too, for people who struggle with depression, because that's what this podcast is geared towards, when you try to meditate and clear your head, that's when it gets you. It's not often possible for someone who struggles with mental health to try to just clear their mind. It's like all of the demons start coming out and attacking you with all these awful thoughts. I feel like Falun Dafa, because there's movement involved and it involves a little more than just sitting and being quiet. Aside from the fact that I think it's the best and the only meditation I would ever recommend to anyone, it's ideal for someone who has a busy mind, who has struggles with the thoughts, because it's not just be quiet and don't think.
Yeah. And you have the music also that goes with the meditation and the exercises.
Where can people find it?
It's online. Yep. Falun Dafa.
Is it falundafa.org? And then there's a video I learned from. So what's special about the music? Was that music chosen for a reason, or is it just nice music?
I'll let Nick answer that one.
Yeah, I mean, the music was made definitely for a reason. The music does have Li Hongzhi's Chinese instructions built in. And so as a Westerner, you read it once and then it is what it is. But it kind of gives you some instructions. It's not a ton, to your point, with the meditation. It's more teaching you the hand movements. And he's kind of introducing it. What is it doing? And then you kind of just get into it. It is interesting. We can turn on the meditation music at any time. Now we're being programmed. It lowers the nervous system almost instantly. We'll just put on the music and then just kind of start doing the exercises. But it's all online for free, to your point earlier. Everything's always for free. Anybody that's teaching this is always doing it for free.
Basically, there's no excuse not to try it and to learn it. And online there is a map, and you can go to wherever you live and find practitioners in your area. And if you live within a few hours of a practitioner, I think it was worth it. Like, it's about an hour and a half drive for me to get from where I live to Scottsdale. Because it's a technology, sometimes it's important how you hold your hand, the distance from your body and so forth. So you can learn from the video, but I think it's helpful to go practice with people who have done it for a long time, who are practitioners. They really know their stuff and can help gently correct you so that you're getting the most out of the practice. And again, it's free, and there's practitioners everywhere. I mean, it's really hard to go to a place where there aren't practitioners. I think even outside of the United States, right? They're all over the world.
Oh, gosh,
and you can access the text for free online. And there's a lot of text, so which one should people look for? It's the one right at the top, isn't it? There's a list, but they're PDFs.
Yeah, the one right at the top is just called Falun Gong, and that's sort of the intro book. And then there's one called Zhuan Falun, which is Rotating the Law Wheel. And then there's a gajillion supplementary lectures and talks that have been given over the last couple decades.
So it would be a really good thing for anyone, including Christians, to add to their study. I would go out on a limb and call it scripture. It feels like that to me. And I think he's a modern day disciple, prophet in his own right. And people may be like, oh, you can't say that. But I have a prophet in my church. He's a prophet of that church. But you read the Bible, there are many prophets. There's not just one. There's usually many prophets all over the world, helping people all over the world, wherever those people needed, where they were at. So I'm not closed off to the idea that there's more than one man called of God to reveal truths to people who are ready to hear them. Yeah. That's just my personal opinion.
Funny. On the main website, too, the most recent articles, because it's funny you said it like that. One of them is How Humankind Came to Be.
Yeah, I read that one.
And it's such a great article. I've sent that to so many people. That was in the Epoch Times even. Sort of this sort of heavy-hearted article where he's basically going, hey, normally we would have a New Year's greeting, but divine beings have told me I need to say this, and here's what I have to say. And it's just a fascinating article, but it just kind of ties in, remember why we're here and how do we go home.
It's the most important question and answer ever, period.
Yeah. Yes.
Just one more thing I wanted to mention with regards to music. We were talking about music earlier. I saw a girl who loves studying music in a scientific sense, and she had the sand machine that she would play different music with, and the sand would move in certain ways. When she played worship music and bells, she was saying, why demons hate bells? Because when you would hear a bell gong, it would make this almost like cross-like Really cool looking, like a cross in the middle of the sand structure. And when she played regular music, pop culture stuff, she gave one example and she showed it, and it was just like this open circle in the middle, just kind of void. And all the sand went to the outside, and it was just like nothing special. So if you consider what that kind of vibration does to your own body, Falun Gong is a energy, it's a vibration that you're inviting in, and it has the ability to change you on a molecular level, a spiritual level. You will change. I don't know how you will change. You will change in miraculous ways, though, I'm sure of it, because I have never met anyone who's done it who hasn't had miraculous changes in their life occur. And if there was one thing in the entire universe that I could recommend to anyone who wants to better their life in any way, including overcoming depression, this would be it. It's easy, it's simple, it's free. Will cost you nothing except a little faith and a little time.
That's right. That's beautiful.
Beautifully said, yes.
So with that said, thank you again so much for being on here today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that others will take it and consider trying Falun Gong, Falun Dafa. And if people have questions, again, go to the website, find practitioners who, I guess I can't speak for them, but the reason they're on there is because their phone numbers are right there.
Correct.
You can
They're
talk to them.
willing to talk to you, yes.
They want to talk to you.
They want to talk to you,
Nick,
yes.
Nick is confirmed. They want to talk to you. Good. So don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Again, appreciate you listening to the end of this podcast. I'm Jennifer Stirling-Campbell, and we've got Nick and Holly Janicki with us. Thank you again. We'll see you next time. If you are new to this podcast, please go watch all of the hashtag introduction videos first, and then consider downloading the Overcome Depression workbook. Links in the description. The content in this podcast is based on my own personal beliefs, is for informational purposes only, and is not intended to substitute for medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Please refer to the full legal disclaimer in the description.